do the old spin around. The James T. Kirk attention-grabbing move. I remember reading that somewhere. I think it was probably George Takei. Somebody complaining about Bill Shatner spinning in his chair like to grab the viewer's attention. I don't know about that. I think he probably was just following the script. But then again, you never know. But anyway, it's a genius move. Hope everybody's doing great out there. Welcome to Dreamland, Japan. And I'm your host and humble servant, Robbie Reilly, here in Tokyo, Japan. Inokashira, Mitaka, Western Tokyo. Well, today I want to show you something. The word algorithm, right? We hear this every day. We say it every day, probably. We're constantly inundated with this algorithm of YouTube and X, Twitter, whatever, Facebook, all social media, essentially tailoring things to us or our own creations, our own content, finding the right audience, finding the right niche, whatever. We keep using the word algorithm because that's the coding, right? The coding that's allowing us, our content and others' content to find its way to the right audience. And put things on top in the search and put things down below when we don't, the gatekeepers don't want us to see it, that kind of thing. But algorithm, and it's so funny because, just a few years ago, I never heard this word, right? Algorithm. I mean, I heard a little bit, but it was never part of our normal speech, never part of our daily discussions. Definitely didn't come up in conversation. Nowadays, like I said, almost every day. If you're dealing with things online quite a lot, it's coming up probably every day. If you're not, if you're an outdoorsman, if you're a lumberjack, like I've got my lumberjack shirt on here, I'm a lumberjack and I'm okay. You're probably not talking about algorithms every day, no. But it does come up, I'm sure. So the reason I bring this up is because I didn't really know about the word algorithm too much. I was never strong in math. But when I was a kid, one of the first movies I saw in the movie theater, in the cinema, was 2001: A Space Odyssey. Now, I think that wasn't I don't think that was the first movie I had seen in the cinema. I think Sound of Music was actually, but the first one I remember really sitting there and suffering through, because I was suffering. I was so bored. I was laying down on the floor underneath my dad's feet. I remember, I think my brother and I, we were laying down on the sticky floor of the Blue Star Cinema in Watchung, New Jersey. There, I'm not sure if it's still there, but the Blue Star Cinema. And 2001 was, of course we woke up a few times and got up but I'm pretty sure we were fast asleep during probably a few of those beauty scenes where they would show a ship, da 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 da, Blue Danube or whatever, making its way majestically and beautifully and poetically through space, or docking and this kind of thing, which of course at the time for most adult viewers this was unbelievable. This was like mind-blowing. This looks so real. We hadn't even been to the moon yet. there was these images of the moon. There were the images of space, of Saturn, of Jupiter, the rings of Saturn. Oh my gosh! You look at that. It's just hard to believe that Kubrick was able to pull that off so well, considering what had come before. You compare that to Flash Gordon and these other things that were out, other movies that were out just prior to that. That we're talking 2001 was, as we all know, was just generations greater in terms of visual effect, in terms of impact. So anyway, I remember watching that, and then later on, as I'd seen it as a teenager again and again, and I'm like, oh wow, this is an awesome movie. This is fantastic. I love it, and I just fell in love with it. And I started reading everything about it. And I remember reading some book. I had a few Kubrick books, some great cinema books on Kubrick and film, but I think it actually was the Arthur C. Clarke novel that I was reading where I first came across the word algorithm. And I remember this. I distinctly remember sitting there reading the book trying to not trying, I was fully understanding it now. So I was taking something that I had not really understood, and I was reading the book just simply out of interest, not to find answers, but simply because, oh, 2001, I'll read it, sure. So I'm reading it and I'm astounded at how clear the story was, how crystal clear the plot was compared to the movie, which is really a work of art. I mean, Kubrick's film is a work of art, no doubt about it. Here I am reading this very, very straightforward novel, which is filling in all the gaps, all the points that I was vague on or had no clue about, and these kinds of things. I'm not even talking about the Stargate or the ending. I'm just talking about just generally just getting like, why is there this? Why is what's happening here? Why did we jump from ape men to, space stations? This kind of all this stuff. I wasn't really clear on it from watching the movie, but now I was totally clear on. And I came across, of course, the question a lot of us were interested in at the time was, the technology, the computer, right? HAL 9000. So I was looking in the novel and I came across HAL 9000, of course, is introduced. And Arthur C. Clarke goes on to introduce HAL as the ultimate in artificial intelligence, in computer assisting mankind, humankind. And of course, we all knew about the IBM connection there, which they denied, Kubrick denied to his dying day, and so did Arthur C. Clarke. But I totally believe that it was a dig or a tip of the hat to IBM, because IBM did consult for the movie. They were one of the consultants, IBM. So it's not like they would be taking a piss, as the Brits would say, taking a piss uh, against IBM or on IBM from a great height. No, I think it was more of an inside joke. It was an inside joke. But they denied it. They denied it. Maybe lawsuits or legal reasons, whatever. But anyway, if you look at the, and I know I'm going off on a tangent here. If you look at the bezel, right, the famous lens, the red lens of Hal, the all-seeing eye, the wide-angle lens. If you look at that and you look at the bezel around it, not so much the lens itself, but the bezel, the rectangle, it was always inset into a rectangle, and the lens was the topmost part of it, and below it was sort of a dark panel, and you'd see spelled out in probably like, Arial or Helvetica or something like that, some very straightforward font, HAL 9000, all caps, all uppercase. And if you look at that, you compare that with the then new IBM bezel, which was installed on all their machines, all their mainframes. It's the same. It's the same. The font's even the same, right? So yeah, it's a connection. But anyway, so they came up with something that HAL would stand for, right? HAL was an acronym. It was not against IBM. It's not an inside joke. HAL has its own reason for being called HAL, and that is HAL stands for, probably know already, heuristically algorithmic, right? Heuristically algorithmic. I remember reading that as a kid in the novel and thinking, what the heck does that? And I went looking for dictionaries, right? I had to know what heuristic meant and what algorithmic meant. Heuristically algorithmic 9000. So 9000 series of this heuristically algorithmic computer. And I found out. So, flash forward to today, and now we use the word constantly. And I think it's sort of, in a way, it's sort of a fulfillment of one more fulfillment of Kubrick and Arthur C. Clarke's prophecies of what would come to be, Pan Am notwithstanding. You can't get it right every time, like Ridley Scott said about Blade Runner. He had TDK, no, what was it? Atari up on the signs, the illuminated signs and the sky tops there of the skyscrapers. Of course, Atari is no longer in business. He had Pan Am as well, right? So did Kubrick had Pan. They both had Pan Am, which was so funny because Pan Am is no longer, and didn't even make it close to 2019 or even 2001. 2001's time frame. But anyway, so there we have algorithms. So the reason why I mentioned all of this 2001 stuff, and it's just an excuse to talk about movies because I love movies. But anyway, there is a reason. There is a reason. And the reason is Doctor Who. That's right, Doctor Who. Look at this. Can you see this? Doctor Who, The Mask of Mandragora by Philip Hinchcliffe. Now, this is the, of course, novelization of the Doctor Who stories, and not, you can see just by the thickness, very thin book, um, very well worn, as you can see, too. 140 pages. So it's one of these original paperback, now kind of not. I think I would call them novelizations. Actually, I don't think this is this is a standalone book that came first. I don't think I have to go back and look at the story and look at the it's falling apart in my hands. I gotta be careful. Look at the actual episodes. Look at the actual episodes of the actual episode of this story, Mask of Mandragora. I'm pretty sure this was one of the episodes in Doctor Who, a Tom Baker episode, if memory serves. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe. Oops, sorry about this. Oops. Do I have this thing on mirror? No. Okay, the Mask of Mandragora. Look at that. And we have an evil prince. We have a Merlin type character who may or may not be the master. I'm not sure, but this actually reminds me of I was gonna say um, Robin Hood or this kind of thing, with you. But actually, no, it's more like or King Arthur. It's more like Princess Bride in a way, with the doctor playing the princess, playing Buttercup. But seriously, it's a fun story. It's that kind of era. It's the knights in shining armor and the dark princes and the Merlins and all this. And I've had this literally for decades. Something just fell out for decades and decades. Oh, excuse me. Yeah, what do we got here? Okay. Oh, this is nice. Oh, look at this. Look at this. Can you see this? Let me see if I can. There we go. Can you see that? Ghibli Museum, Mitaka. It's actually a strip of film, and I don't know. I can't quite make it out, but there's 3 frames of film, actual film. It's an actual piece of film that is embossed with this cardboard here. And let's see what it is. Can't quite make it out. I'd have to get a magnifying glass. But it's actually a piece of film, 3 pieces really, 3 frames, I should say. And it is the ticket, 1,000 yen, 1,000 yen for adults and for college students. And judging by, okay, there you go, cinema. Yeah, so actually, you know what this is? This is actually to see the small. I think they gave you this to watch the small short films that they made inside the museum for the museum only. So you cannot see these short films, short animated films by Ghibli, by um, uh, Hidao Murasaki-sama. You cannot, and Mr. Saito, you cannot see these outside the Ghibli. Boy, I'm having trouble getting that out. Huh? Let's try this again. You cannot see these short films outside of the museum, the Ghibli Museum. So therefore, intra museum use only. So you're privileged, to be able to watch that inside there. Sort of like a little bit of a thank you for coming to the museum, spending $10. But it's a fantastic museum. But anyway, that's kind of a fun. Wow, look at that. A little bit of serendipity there. I wish I had noted what page that was on. But that has been in there probably for about 10 years, 15 years in there. That's when the last time. Anyway, so algorithms and Doctor Who. So yeah, so here it is, Christmas, just the other day, Christmas, and I'm on YouTube and I'm on X actually, and I come across a YouTube clip from Doctor Who, Tom Baker and Laura Tam, I think her name is, played not Morgana, but what was her name? And she and the doctor are out of character. They're just the actors there. It's just Tom Baker and Miss Tam sitting there with Canine, and they're drinking. They're having a bit of bubbly, and they're having some holiday spirits. And in fact, when the camera shows up on them first, they're actually making out behind the bottle. Not you know you can't be sure, but clearly that's the implication. And then of course they're startled by the camera, and it's all in good fun. They're all kind of joking it up, and then they wish everyone a Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays. So it's a really sweet thing. But I thought, oh, I've never seen this before, and for good reason. It was not meant to be seen. It was a studio only thing. They would never dare show something like that to the public because one, he's out of character, and two, they're doing something a little bit lewd. I mean, that you really probably shouldn't be doing. Even in the series, he wasn't kissing anybody. That wasn't going on with the doctor, right? There was always the implication, always the innuendo, always the what's that Adam song? Subtle innuendo, Miss Goody Two Shoes. Yeah, a lot of that, but it was never consummated, right? Which kept the fire burning. But anyway, so this showed up on my algorithmic feed, right? It was sent to me because of something else I was looking up. And I was not looking up Doctor Who at all. So somehow this got to me through Christmas things or whatever. I was looking at It's a Wonderful Life. I was looking at Alastair Sim, with Dickens's Christmas Carol, these kinds of things. Looking up the Rankin Bass Christmas, puppet animation productions, those kinds of things. So somehow the Doctor Who thing got to me, and I thought, wow, this is great. So I started watching some Tom Baker interviews, and I was enjoying myself so much. So I just happened to remember that I had this book on my bookshelf. I said, you know what? I'm gonna reread this. I'm gonna reread this one more time right along over the winter holidays. It's such a short thing. It's really like a short story, but I'm gonna enjoy this. And here's really the whole reason I'm bringing this up. I'm not going to read you the book. No, don't worry. Don't panic. But I am going to read the introduction. It's very short. It's actually not even an introduction. You know what it's called? Well, it is. It is called it is called in. But in the contents, it's called the introduction. But on the page where it starts, it's called amenities. And I'll show you here. Let's see if we can get this here. So, amenities. Oh, let's hold it still. Introducing Doctor Who, amenities performed by Harlan Ellison. So that's what I'm going to read to you. It's really great. This is really great. So just, bear with me here as I go through the motions, and here we go. Introducing Doctor Who, amenities performed by Harlan Ellison. Here we go. They could not have been more offended, confused, enraged, and startled. There was a moment of stunned silence, and then an eruption of angry voices from all over the 1,500-person auditorium. The kids in their Luke Skywalker pajamas, cobbled up from older brother's cast-off karate gi, and the retarded adults spot-welded into their Darth Vader fright masks, howled with fury. But I stood my ground. There, on the lecture platform, at the World Science Fiction Convention, I repeated the heretical words that had sent them into animal hysterics. Star Wars is adolescent nonsense. Close Encounters is obscurist drivel. Star Trek can turn your brains to puree of bat guano. And the greatest science fiction series of all time is Doctor Who. And I'll take you all on one by one, or all in a bunch to back it up. It definitely sounds like Harlan. Auditorium monitors moved in, truncheons ready to club down anyone foolish enough to try jumping the lecture platform. And finally, there was a relative silence. And I heard scattered voices screaming from the back of the room, "Who?" And I said, "Yes, who?" It was like that old Abbott and Costello routine. Who's on first? No, who's on third? What's on first? After a while, we got it all sorted out, And they understood that when I said who, I didn't mean whom, I meant who. Doctor Who, the most famous science fiction character on British television, the renegade Time Lord, the far traveler through time and space, the sword of justice from the planet Gallifrey, the scourge of villains and monsters the galaxy over, the one and only, the incomparable, the bemusing and bewildering Doctor Who, the humanistic defender of good and truth, whose exploits put to shame those of Kimball Kinnison, Captain Future, and panty-waist nerds like Han Solo and Luke Skywalker. Oh my goodness. My hero, Doctor Who. For the American reading and television viewing audience, and in this role, and in this sole isolated case, I hope they're one and the same. Doctor Who is a new factor in the equation of fantastic literature. Since 1963, the Doctor and his exploits have been a consistent element of British culture. But we're only now being treated to the wonderful universes of Who here in the States. For those of us who were exposed to both the TV series on BBC and the long series of Doctor Who novels published in Great Britain, well, maybe this is one of them. The time of solitary proselytizing is at an end. All we need to do now is thrust a Who novel into the hands of the unknowledgeable, or drag the unwary to a TV set and turn it on as the good doctor goes through his paces. That's all it takes. Try this book and you'll understand. I envy you your first exposure to this amazing conceit, and I wish for you the same delight I felt when Michael Moorcock, the finest, not the final, the finest fantasist in the English-speaking world, sat me down in front of his set in London, turned on the telly, and said, "Now be quiet and just watch." That was 1975, and I've been hooked on Doctor Who ever since. Understand, I despise television, having written for it for 16 years. And I spend much of my time urging people to bash in their picture tubes with Louisville sluggers, to free themselves of the monster of the coaxial cable. And so you must perceive that I speak of something utterly extraordinary and marvelous when I suggest you watch the Doctor Who series in whatever syndicated slot your local station has scheduled. You must recognize that I risk all credibility for future exhortations by telling you this TV viewing will not harm you, will, in fact, delight and uplift you, stretch your imagination, tickle your risibilities, flense your intellect of all lesser visual SF affectations, improve your disposition, and clean up your zits. What I'm saying here, in case you're a yachts who needs things codified simply and directly, is that Doctor Who is the apex, the pinnacle, the tops, the Louvre Museum, the tops, says the tops twice, says the tops the twice, the Colosseum and other etc. Now, to give you a few basic facts about the Doctor, to brighten your path through this nifty series of lunatic novels, here is a Time Lord. Here is a Time Lord, one of that immensely wise and powerful super race of alien beings who for centuries outnumbered and unnumbered have watched and studied all of time and space with intellects, as H.G. Wells put it, vast, cool, and unsympathetic. Their philosophy was never to their philosophy was never to interfere in the affairs of alien races, merely to watch and wait. But one of their number, known only as the Doctor, found such inaction anathema. As he studied the interplay of great forces in the cosmos, the endless wars and invasions, the entropic conflict between good and evil, the rights and lives of 1,000 alien life forms debased and brutalized, the wrongs left unrighted, he was overcome by the compulsion to act. He was a renegade, a misfit in the name of justice. And so he stole a TARDIS and fled. Ah, yes, the TARDIS. That most marvelous device for spanning the timelines and traversing all known and unknown space. The name is an acronym for time and relative dimensions in space. Marvelous! An amazing machine that can change shape to fit in with any locale in which it materializes. But the TARDIS stolen from his fellow Time Lords by the Doctor was in for repairs, and so it was frozen in the shape of its first appearance, a British call box, a British police call box. Those of you who have been to England may have seen such call boxes. There are very few of them extant currently because the London bobbies now have two-way radios in their patrol cars. But before the advent of that communication system, the tall, dark, blue street call box, something like our old-fashioned wooden phone booths, was a familiar sight in the streets of London. If a police officer needed assistance, he could call in directly from such a box. And if the station house wanted to get in touch with a copper, they could turn on the big blue light atop the box, and its flashing would attract a bobby. Further wonder, the outward size of the TARDIS does not reveal its relative size inside. The size of a phone booth outwardly, it is enormous within, holding many sections and levels, filled with the Doctor's super scientific equipment. Unfortunately, the stolen TARDIS needed more repairs than just the fixing of its shape-changing capabilities. Its steering mechanism was also wonky, and so the Doctor could never be certain that the coordinates he set for time and place of materializing would be correct. He might set course for the planet Karn and wind up in Victoria, London. He might wish to relax at an intergalactic pleasure resort and pop into existence in Antarctica. He might lay in a course for the deadly gold mines of Voga and appear in Renaissance Italy. It makes for a chancy existence, but the Doctor takes it all unflinchingly, as do his attractive female traveling companions, whose liaisons with the Doctor are never sufficiently explicated for those of us with a nasty, suspicious turn of mind. The Doctor looks human and, apart from his quirky way of thinking, even acts human most of the time. But he is a Time Lord and not a mere mortal. He has two hearts, a stable body temperature of 60 degrees, and not to stun you too much, he's approximately 750 years old. Or at least he was that age when the first of the 43 Doctor Who novels were written. God, or Time Lords, only knows how old he is now. Only slightly less popular than the good Doctor himself are his arch foes and the distressing alien monsters he battles through the pages of these wild books and in phosphor dot reality on your TV screens. They seem endless in their variety. The Vardons, the Oracle, Fendal, the virus swarm of the Purpose, the Master, the tongue of the Black Scorpion, the evil brain of Morbius, the mysterious energy force known as the Mandragora Helix, the android clone Kralls, the Zygons, the Cybermen, the Ice Warriors, the Autons, the spore beast called the Crinoid, and most deadly and menacing of them all, you know what I'm going to say, the robot threat of the Daleks. Created by a mad Davros, the great Khalid scientist, the pepper pot-shaped Daleks made such an impression in England when they were first introduced into the series that they became a cultural artifact almost immediately. Movies have been made about them. Toys have been manufactured of Daleks. Coloring books, Dalek candies, soap, slippers, Easter eggs, even special Dalek fireworks. They rival the Doctor for the attention of a fascinated audience, and they have been brought back again and again during the 14 years the series has perpetuated itself on BBC television. 14 years. And their shiveringly pleasurable manifestations have not been confined just to England and America. Doctor Who and the Daleks have millions of rabid fans in over 30 countries around the world. Like the three fictional characters every nation knows, Sherlock Holmes, Tarzan, and Superman, Doctor Who seems to have a universal appeal. Let me conclude this paean of praise with these thoughts. Hating Star Wars and Star Trek is not a difficult chore for me. I recoil from that sophomoric species of creation that excuses its simplistic cliche structure and homage to the transitory, as does Star Wars, as violently as I do from that which sensuously purports to be deep and intellectual, when it is, in fact, superficial, self-conscious twaddle, as does Star Trek. This is not to say that I am an ivory tower intellect whose double dome can only support Proust or Descartes. When I was a little kid and I was reading everything I could lay my hands on, I read the classics with joy, but enjoyed equally those works I've come to think of as elegant trash. The Edgar Rice Burroughs novels, The Shadow, Doc Savage, Conan, comic books, and Uncle Wiggily. They taught me a great deal of what I know about courage and truth and ethic in the world. To that list, I add Doctor Who. His adventures are sunk to the hips in humanism, decency, solid adventure, and simple good reading. They are not classics, make no mistake. They can never touch the illuminative level of Dickens or Mark Twain or Kafka, but they are solid entertainment based on the understanding of good and evil in the world. They say to us, you too can be Doctor Who. You, like the good doctor, can stand up for that which is bright and bold and true. You can shape the world if you'll only go and try. And they do it in the form of all great literature, the cracking, good, well-plotted adventure yarn. They are direct lineal heirs to the adventures of Rider Haggard and Talbot Mundy, of H.G. Wells and Jules Verne, of Mary Shelley and Ray Bradbury. They are worth your time. And if you give yourself up to the doctor's winsome ways, he will take substance and reality in your imagination. For that reason, for the inestimable goodness and delight in every Doctor Who adventure, for the benefits he prefers, I lend my name and my urging to read and watch him. I don't think you'll do less than thank me for shoving you down with this book in your hands and telling you, here's who. Meet the Doctor. I don't think you'll do less than thank. The pleasure is all mine and all yours, kiddo. Harlan Ellison, Los Angeles. There we go. Yeah. So isn't that a that is some screed, isn't it? Holy cow. So, of course, and I love it. I love it. Of course, I love Star Wars. I love Star Trek. They're my favorites. But and Doctor Who is probably number three, maybe four, three or four. But yeah, Star Wars, Star Trek, alternating position of number one, and then Doctor Who. But I just thought it was just so fun. And of course, Harlan, for those people who are getting their back up, how dare he say that about, you know, especially Star Trek. We all know that he wrote what is considered to be and consistently ranked as the number one episode of Star Trek. All Star Treks, not just the first series, not just all Star Treks. Consistently rated number one episode. That is an incredible feat considering how many Star Treks have been produced. And that is also an incredible feat considering how great so many of the original episodes were. Although all the series were great. I'm a big Next Gen fan. I like Deep Space Nine, Voyager, and then after Voyager, I kind of lost interest. But I know a lot of people haven't. A lot of people are really into, Below Decks and all that stuff. I'm not. But to each his own. And I like some of the movies, not all of them. Wrath of Khan, of course. Khan, of course. But yes, the number one episode Harlan Ellison wrote for Star Trek, City on the Edge of Forever. Many of you know this already, right? And you also know that they changed the ending on him, the ending that he originally wrote. Now, of course, I agree with the studio because if they had kept the ending, the original ending that Harlan wrote, the series would stop. That would be the end of this, right? So they couldn't, obviously. But as a standalone story, Harlan's ending is best because it is the most powerful. But it would end the series, so they obviously couldn't use it. But they changed that ending. But everything else they pretty much kept intact. And it's just a marvelous episode and a marvelous script. And we've all probably seen it, I think, by now. Um, but so he knows from what he speaks when he takes digs at Star Trek, particularly, having written for them and also written for Outer Limits, as we know. He wrote 2 episodes of Outer Limits, both of which were cribbed by modern filmmakers, uh, James Cameron being one and Ridley Scott being the other, for their own blockbuster fantastic movies. Now, that's a whole debate in itself, and you can split hairs. But let it be said that on the newest releases of Terminator, it has an acknowledgement at the end, attributing Harlan Ellison with the origin of the story. So there you go. So now James Cameron is not one to admit or say he's guilty if he's not. Certainly not one to pay out a lot of money either. He did both to Harlan Ellison. So that tells you something right there. Also, it must be noted that, like I said, Ridley Scott, if you watch Demon with a Glass Hand, oh, by the way, yeah, so the episode of Outer Limits that was the term that became Terminator was called Soldier, about a futuristic soldier, not a cyborg, mind you, a human who is been genetically bred to be a soldier, right? Uh, and something that was far-fetched at the time, something that today perhaps is not so far-fetched. And he goes through some sort of a time warp and ends up in then contemporary society of 1960s. And this family takes him in, so it's a strange story, but and there the similarity diverges. So, but the opening of the episode, it's unmistakable. It's unmistakable. Terminator, right? Particularly Terminator when Kyle falls asleep there in the car and he dreams of he has a dream, a nightmare of his own time, and you see the tractor trailer treads crushing skulls, right, as these tanks move along, obliterating anything living. And the flying hunter killers are zooming in and shooting at things on the ground, and these soldiers are running through rubble and broken down cars and things fire. Look at the Outer Limits episode. You're not getting that kind of a level of effect, of course, for a cheap TV show, but you're getting a lot of that. It's unmistakable, unmistakable. In fact, even the hunter killer um, laser bolts and the way the thing looks a lot like the ones in Terminator. So, and the Ridley Scott connection, far more tenuous, not quite as clear cut, but let's just say that if you remember, Blade Runner ends, the whole conclusion of Blade Runner, the whole last 30 minutes of Blade Runner takes place in the Bradbury building, right? That beautiful building in Los Angeles with the center atrium and the cage elevator. That's where J.F. Sebastian lived. That's where the chase takes place. Ends up on the rooftop, right? Roy Batty and Deckard. And it's even called the Bradbury building, right, in the movie. Now, rewind to Outer Limits. Outer Limits episode Demon with a Glass Hand. Robert Culp plays a tall, athletic, quote unquote, person who is running around the inside of the Bradbury building, trying to save himself and save a woman. Her name's not Rachel, but save a woman in the building who he befriended, who he seems to be attracted to a little bit, and she's definitely attracted to him. But he's being pursued by creatures, people who come from another time, who are different, who have come through a time portal. And this Bradbury building seems to be some sort of a membrane where they can pass back and forth. This is where these aliens have set up shop. I won't tell you the conclusion or anything, but I will say that Robert Culp, who plays the figure the Gilgamesh sort of, who runs around the building trying to take out these aliens inside the Bradbury building, like Deckard, his origins are unknown until the end, where we discover what he actually is. And just like with Deckard, some would say, if you follow the director's cut of Blade Runner. I happen to not like that. I happen to think Deckard was a human, but I don't want to lay these spoilers in for Demon with a Glass. Yeah, see Demon with a Glass Hand. Absolutely, it's one of the best. The effects are very minimal. It's almost like a stage play. So you just got to get yourself past that, past the makeup and the effects of that, and don't start like turning it into a MST3K episode where you're making fun of it. Just take it in as a stage play, and you'll really enjoy it. And the writing is exceptional. Harlan Ellison. So say what you will, but I think that influenced Blade Runner, and I think, and for sure, not just me, but obviously, Soldier greatly influenced, perhaps was the inspiration for Terminator. Now, some people could say that, well, I'd never seen that. I never saw that. How can you say I'm copying? I never saw it, which is true. That happens. That happens. I've even had ideas of my own show up. I've seen them. I've seen them show up, produced. I'm like, what the heck? How is it possible? I never even saw that. I never read that book. It happens. So there is that too. There is that too. So, and who really knows? But I think during the trial, there was a trial for the Terminator attribution, because Harlan, very litigious, sued James Cameron. There was a point. I'm not sure if this is urban myth or not, but there was a witness, so to speak. The bring in the bring in the secret witness, right? And this must have been really, really great too in the courtroom, because they brought in somebody who worked on Terminator, the crew. I don't know if this was above the line person below. I don't know. And it could have been somebody with a grudge, you never know. But because James Cameron, I'm sure, is not easy to work with. I know he's not easy to work with, actually. But anyway, he this worker, this cast, this crew member said he overheard a conversation between James Cameron and I forget who it was, who was asking Cameron, "Where did you get this idea? Like, how'd you come up with this?" And James Cameron's reply was, "Oh, I just, one of those old sci-fi Outer Limits episodes." Right? So, in those days, those shows were not, we're talking 1985, 86 when Terminator came out. You know, there wasn't even Turner Classic Movies. There was not TNT. There was none of these things really were going full steam yet. So you didn't really have a chance to see old Outer Limits episodes. They were all in syndication, but they rarely showed up. Twilight Zone showed up a lot. Star Trek showed up a lot, but you didn't see Outer Limits unless you had to be really lucky to see the Outer Limits episodes. They were not shown a lot. So I think he probably just thought, "No, nobody would notice. Nobody will. I'm just taking a little piece of it. Just this future soldier coming back." So he didn't. So Harlan didn't write about a cyborg. That's clear too. Like, he wrote about a soldier, a human being who was genetically modified to be a soldier to fight other people like that in the future. So there was no cyborg, there was no Terminator. So I think that was James Cameron's point, was like, I didn't take the Terminator idea. There's just a coincidence between this Kyle character who comes back, this soldier. But he lost the case. He had to pay. Well, it was settled out of court, I think. I think it was settled out of court. So I don't know if he lost it or not, but it was settled. But anyway, his Harlan's name appeared in the credits. There you go. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed Harlan's words here on Doctor Who. And another reason, like I said, the algorithm earlier, another reason was, looking at the Tombaker clips there on YouTube, and I watched several different ones, interviews. And then there was one, I had seen some that were like 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, 7, 8, 10, 12 years old. And he did a bunch, not really, really long things, but enjoyable. And just his wit was always there, his sharpness. He never lost any of that. He hasn't lost any of that. And his voice is just such a beautiful, beautiful voice. And his self-deprecating, yes, yet self-bravado humor is just right, is the Fourth Doctor. Absolutely. But I saw a message just this holiday season, maybe just a couple of days before Christmas. He put out a message from his home, I think, beautiful home. I think he's in Sussex there. Looked like a castle wall behind him there, like a fireplace and all. And he gave a holiday greetings. And oh, he looked so thin. I didn't recognize him. I couldn't believe it's him. So prepare yourself. If you go looking for Tom Baker clips, prepare yourself to be shocked because the difference is that I saw him in so many post Doctor Who years where he's kind of chubby actually, and his hair's kind of cut short. He looked a little bit funny, but he was definitely Tom Baker. Now you look at him and you're like, who is that? You don't see Tom Baker. I see kind of a very elderly Peter Cushing in a way. He's got, his cheekbones are really, it's like this. And Tom Baker was never like that. So that is kind of sad to see that. However, his message and his words and his eloquence and his diction, were all perfect, perfectly beautiful. He is 91. He's going to be 91 in January. That's we should all be so lucky, gauntness or not, whatever. Holy cow. I mean, come on. Amazing. It's amazing. So I just hope he keeps going, keeps going. Kirk Douglas made it to 100, right? And who else? Jimmy Carter, right? Is Jimmy Carter still with us? I think he is. He's over 100. Henry Kissinger, I think he was 100 or close to it, eating bratwurst every day. So you just never know. It's genetics, right? It's like soldier. It's like you're bred for something. Your genetics, I think, play a large part in your longevity because you see some people who didn't ever exercise, never took care of themselves, ate like Kissinger, ate bratwurst every day, right? I mean, something that pretty much every health expert would say, do not eat this, not even once. This is going to get, you know, cured and processed meat, luncheon meat. Oh my God, fried. Oh, and the fat. Oh, and yet the guy was in China. I think he was in China when he turned 100. I think he was over there. Just before he passed away, he had traveled around still. Of course, wheelchair and all that, but still, and he has a staff, but still, think about that. So Tom Baker, if you're out there listening, or if you know Tom Baker, if you're lucky enough to have his acquaintance, then pass on our love to him. We all love him, and we hope he lives another good 10 years at least, another 20. You never know, technology and advancements in health sciences. You just never know. Get these little bit of boosts as you go along. Anyway, hope you enjoyed this, and if you haven't read the Doctor Who novels, I definitely recommend picking up some. You could probably find these on eBay or Amazon. Like I didn't actually. I've had this, like I said, for years, but you can easily find. I used to have a bunch of these. I had a whole mess of them. One of my favorites was the Loch Ness Monster with the Brigadier. Oh, and for those Doctor Who fans, I was watching one of the interviews, and I definitely encourage you to watch the interviews that he does. And he mentions the Brigadier. I swear I started breaking up, choking up watching this. He starts talking about the Brigadier and how loved he was. I was like, ah, we all love the Brigadier. We love that guy. I forgot his name. Aston Stewart. I forgot his real name. I should remember that. That's terrible. But the Brigadier, yeah, the actor passed away at least a decade or two ago. But it was nice to hear Tom talk about him that way because you don't know these things. You don't know how people are behind the scenes and how the cast and crew relate to them and how they are, how their real personality is. We've all heard stories of people who we are beloved on screen, and then we meet them in real life and they're assholes, right? We all know those stories. So it's nice to get them the other way where you find out, oh my gosh, this person who might even have been a little bit persnickety or demanding in their character in real life was this big softy, big teddy bear, right? It's so nice. Tom Baker, conversely, you could say, wasn't any of that. He was Tom Baker as the Doctor. Like he says, I'm not an actor. I wasn't acting. That was me. I was just being myself. I say silly things. I do things like this. I'm extraordinary sometimes, I make a lot of mistakes and I fall down and I trip on my scarf. That's who I am. So I just became me. That's how I was able to get back into character so easily after so many years because it's Tom Baker. I'm being Tom. So I thought that was hilarious, and I thought that was wonderful as well. So he said, that's the beauty of being a Doctor Who, being a doctor in Doctor Who, is that you get to be your own doctor. You get to create your own doctor. He says that's what's so wonderful about it. Yeah, just anyway, I could go on and on about these interviews. Just go check them out. I hope you enjoy them. So take care, everybody. Have a good one, and we'll catch you next time. Thanks for tuning in. Dreamland, Japan. Here we are, like I said, in Mitaka, Inokashira, Kichijoji, Western Tokyo. We'll catch you next time around. Bye-bye.